Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This session is co-sponsored by the Central Asia-Caucasus Institute in Washington and Stockholm, and by the Rumsfeld Foundation and the CACI and CAMCA, CAMCA Fellowship Group, which spreads across all Caucasus and Central Asia. Our topic this morning is business life in the new Uzbekistan. As we all know, the great reforms and changes have been proposed and are being instituted there. A lot has been said about the investment climate for foreigners, but rather less has been appreciated, studied, and analyzed on the situation for the entrepreneur from Uzbekistan itself. And that's our subject this morning. We want to hear what they've achieved, what complications they've faced. If they have recommendations of where the whole effort should go in the future, that would be of interest too. And we, of course, want to hear from our viewers and listeners around the world. So we're going to begin with Mr. Hikmat Abdurahmanov, who is co-founder of Team University and a co-founder of HM Partners and the country director for GEM Uzbekistan. He's a graduate of the University of World Economy and Diplomacy, has master's and bachelor's in international economics at UWED, and a second master's degree from St. Andrews School of International Business. Together with his partners, he launched several successful companies leasing in the area of leasing, foreign trade, services to SMEs, and so forth. He is a board member of Korzinka, chairman of the Public Council of Tashkent, chair of the Central Eurasian Leadership Alliance, and Polytech Bank, and Team University, as I mentioned before. He is a co-founder of this interesting university, which I've followed its course with great interest, and it is focused on the field of entrepreneurship in Uzbekistan. Hikmat Abdurahmanov.
Dr. Starr, thank you very much for such a great introduction. I have to confess that some of what you have said is already in the past, as life develops very quickly, but I would be happy to share some of my experiences of recent developments and recent entrepreneurship activity in Uzbekistan. And I was asked to share more about personal stories, something that really touched my personal life or my businesses. And many of you are, those who are now currently participating at this panel talk, actively participate in changes in the country. Some of them, my colleagues, are also my partners, so we have launched some initiatives together. So I would basically, within 5-7 minutes, would like to answer to several questions. Number one is, how would I describe Uzbekistan prior to changes starting in 2016? Then I would like to go on responding to a question, what really changed, and what I would say impact those changes had on my businesses and businesses of my partners. So going back to 2016, me and several of my partners, we have been involved into quite a diversified portfolio of businesses. And that really illustrates, I would say, entrepreneurship in Uzbekistan, when in order to be ready for the risks, one would diversify and spread his or her risks to several business directions. And if you meet someone in Uzbekistan doing business, be it a small or medium-sized company, you would hear that they would run at least 5 to 10 businesses simultaneously. And that would be funny because if you look at a market economy, obviously the question you would ask, do you focus, and how do you keep up with the rest of your competitors? So a simple explanation of that diversification was, if you lose one of your businesses because of some of your competitors would use non-market tools to get rid of you, you would still keep something else. And obviously, I would also describe previous times with a heavy domination of state. Did it change? Slightly, yes. We still feel the domination of the state, the government in many fields. But if you look at the previous times, like 5 years back, that was just horrible. How would I spend most of my time? Most of my time personally would go to handle very like operational stuff, like how to handle several exchange rates for the businesses, because one of our key businesses was trade and still is trade. If you look at that now, that's pretty much a business of an accountant or a financial manager in a normal situation. But 5 to 7 years ago, many founders would end up really looking for cash, looking for hard currency, and they would deal with the question of how they convert their currency, because there was no free currency convertibility, and that was a huge pain in the neck. So describing the previous times, I would say that was a total manual management, that was a total diversification, and total domination of state. What started to change in 2016 and onwards, since we have, as you have said, Dr. Starr, we have several directions. One is trade, second is finance. We run several leasing companies and several businesses that help small and medium enterprises to operate, such as we had chain of co-working spaces, we had and still have digital marketing company, and a consultancy business. So right now, how would I describe the current situation? I would say focus, 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 meaning that if you don't focus on your existing and core business, you will just probably go bankrupt, because competition increased so much that you need to stick to your core competence. And obviously, we have been significantly influenced by COVID. And if you look at our business portfolio, half of that actually was reduced. Either it became not actual for the market. So we've got rid of several businesses and focused on the core ones, which is trade. But within the trade, we also decided to concentrate on specific brand, which is called Longking. It's a Chinese brand. And we got rid of the rest of the trade in order to focus. Secondly, we have increasing competition, and traditional spheres such as, let's say, education, which was only dominated by the government. Currently, as Dr. Starr mentioned, we have launched a university, and I have to say this has been done together with Zafar Khashimov and Anvar Irchaev, who are also present on this panel. And here I just would like to mention how networking works, because CAMCA network really helped. I remember our CAMCA forum in Tashkent, where I was getting advices from Dr. Starr. He personally was coaching me, mentoring me on how universities should develop because of his rich background in higher education. And also David Sumbadze, who hosted me in Georgia and introduced me to several founders of private universities in Georgia. So this really helped. And we traveled around the region and got very good experience of higher education. And it took us 2 years, though, to get the permission from the government. But finally, in the middle of the pandemics last year, we got our government's decree signed by Prime Minister, and gladly for 1 year on, we are running it. So that would really describe what's happening in Uzbekistan. The traditional spheres such as higher education now are more or less open for competition. So what is left now is to really be a strong player, really work and come up with a competitive advantage, because customer in many regards have option. And another example is our co-working space. We had to readjust to the market. We had to readjust ourselves and become more stronger to compete with our competitors. So giving final remarks on what I say, I would like to finalize by saying that environment in Uzbekistan is much more rigorous and competitive. Unfortunately, government, because government officials and a lot of people in the mid-level of the government are still the same. So it was not like in some neighboring countries where a bunch of new, let's say, young people came to the government and they have transformed everything. No, we are going through a different scenario with its ups and downs. But I would say that some services transformed, government services transformed to become also quite competitive, but bureaucracy is still there. So overall, I would say that environment is very competitive and very attractive. But although somewhere we see huge changes, but in some spheres we are all the same. So with that, I would like to pass the word probably to back to Dr. Starr, and I'll be happy to respond to any of arising questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much. And let us turn now to Dora Atadjanova. She launched her company, which deals in export of agricultural goods, in 2018. The company, called Teodora Goods, was the first in Uzbekistan to export fresh fruits to France, and she also supplies Russian supermarket chains. She's most interesting. She decided to build a multi-sided platform in the form of a mobile app called Dalatek. This is aimed at providing a database of all farmers and smallholders in Uzbekistan and gives access to this information to exporters, traders, service providers, banks, and insurance companies. I hope they can learn about its existence so they can benefit from it. Dora, it's to you.
Yes, thank you for the introduction. First of all, I need to share that the first time I heard that I'm invited to this meeting, to this conference, I was like, yeah, absolutely yes, after hearing this, who the speakers are. So I'm very flattered that I'm among the Starr team. And yeah, let's start my presentation. I have a presentation, so can we start the screen sharing? Yeah, cool. Well, first of all, let me introduce myself. Yeah, we can go to the first page. Who I am, my background, I'm born and living in Uzbekistan. I used to live in Malaysia for 5 years. I went there to study engineering. However, I couldn't complete it. I came back to Uzbekistan. I saw the opportunity here, and I launched my company in exporting fresh fruits and vegetables in 2018. After that, I saw a few problems here, and so that will be explained in the next page. But yeah, now at this moment, what I'm dealing with is a mobile app, which called Dalatek. And my plans are within 3 years to cover 5 countries and to help farmers to improve their business. We can go to the next page. Yeah, so long story short, how I started, I came to this business, the business of man, I would say. And then I started doing it the same way like others, in a, let's say, traditional way of exporting goods. I failed, I lost money. Then I started learning on my mistakes. I went to Spain, Italy, and India to learn their cold chain. I learned those lessons. I applied it here. I succeeded. But I faced the fact that I cannot expand. So that's why I came up with a hypothesis that we can build an app connecting farmers and exporters, and that will be the first stage in order to build a system in agribusiness in Uzbekistan. Next page. So what is it? Yeah, that's a multi-sided platform, which means we are, first of all, collecting the database. At this moment, we do not have any database. It was a struggle for me to export. When I was exporting, I had to go to farmers and go each farm and find where this person is and talk to them. So it was like a very big pain. We lost a lot of time. So I was like, what if we just had one database where I can find them, what I'm searching. So at this moment, it's on MVP base. We have three type of users: farmers, exporters, and the cold storage. So the farmers can register, they can put their mapping, and also they can also tell what product they have and for how much they're willing to sell it. This information comes to the exporters, to all exporters, and they see it, so they can also offer their deal. So this is how they are finding each other. At this moment, we don't have it in Uzbekistan. And my goal in MVP, not just in MVP, but my goal in terms of Uzbekistan to have a database of 4 million farmers and the 5,000 exporters. Next page. In terms of employment, because not everybody is a farmer, we don't do it on the play market. So we are using the agent-based recruiting new users. So agents, which are students in rural areas, going to the farmers and teaching them how to, first of all, they're downloading the app to their phones and teaching them how to use it. This is how we are creating 3,000 jobs for the rural area for the students. And we are teaching them how to work with it. We're also building a self-development community because it's a good source. It's youngsters who wants to change. So this is why we are helping them to develop their knowledge. We're also offering to build their own businesses based on our platform. There is opportunity for it. And yeah, next page. Yeah, in terms of help in Uzbekistan, well, I'm a young female, and if I'm managing to do the business in a man's business, then it also tells about something about the government. I do feel support quite a bit, especially, it's not because I'm a female, it's because I'm doing export of agriculture goods. In Uzbekistan, there is a special attention to this field. So any problems we have access from the government, so we can call them and tell them we have this problem, and usually it's being solved within a few days, sometimes within a few hours. So this is a really good part about building, running agriculture business. At the same time, building this, having this business in agro-tech, I'm having at this moment the support from the Ministry of Investment and Foreign Trade. They're providing infrastructure from the Agency of Youth Affairs, from the Ministry of Employment and in terms of infrastructure and database, from the USAID, and from the EBRD. This is the help we're getting. And yeah, the next page, if there is. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, this is the short story. I hope I covered the main part, the most part of it. Thank you for attention.
I have just one very quick question. Does your family have a background in farming?
The family?
Yes.
No, I opened myself. It's just my dad started this the business of export in 90s, but he failed. He lost a lot of money in 90s. He never started back, but I was 5 years old. When I was 5 years old, I saw those factories, but yeah, we didn't have it. And I started when I was 24. So there was not a family business. I launched it myself.
That's very interesting. Thank you so much. We turn now to Anvar Irchaev. He is the director of Orient Capital Management, which is an investment consultancy in Tashkent. He was, prior to that, worked at different subsidiaries of Allianz AG in Germany and Moscow. Since 2019, he has also been chairman of the supervisory board of the JSC Universal Bank. He's a graduate of Tashkent State Technical University in the business management faculty and received a master's degree in international finance from the Hamburg University of Economics and Politics. Anvar.
Good morning and good evening, everyone. Dr. Starr, thank you very much for giving me a word. It's a big honor for me to be here. I try to take not more than 5 minutes, from 5 to 10 minutes of your time to describe about my views on the economy and how it's growing, how it's progressing. So let me first start with myself. As you already mentioned, after graduating from Hamburg Hochschule für Wirtschaft und Politik, so it's called in German, I wrote my diploma at McKinsey, made up like an internship there. And even now, I remember the fact, so after internship, they offered me a contract with a 64,000 euro annual salary, which was like a wow for me, for a fresh student. This was a like very big experience for me. So at that time, McKinsey was making like projects in almost every big company of Germany. So I appeared to be in a project with Allianz AG. We worked on the projects of, so that time the bank assurance theory and bank assurance concept was like very heavily discussed and was implemented in Russia. So probably you know that at the end of the project, Allianz bought Dresdner Bank also to sell banking products, though this experience turned not to be very successful. So I moved to Allianz in 2002, moved with the Allianz team to Moscow. So as a part of the group, we bought that time the 4th largest Russian insurance company called Rosno, and I was part of the team. So at the same time, to manage the insurance reserves of Rosno, we established an asset management company called Allianz Rosno Asset Management, and I grew to become a deputy director of this company. But due to family reasons, and I'm the single son of my parents, I made a decision to come back to Tashkent and established, as you mentioned, an investment company called Orient Capital Management. In the beginning, so it was supposed to be just a investment consultancy company. So I was planning to consult foreign companies, foreign investors on the strategies how to enter Uzbekistan. But after a few years, we understood, and I understand that this business is, I mean, there is a very limited possibility for growth. And we started to invest our own funds, our own money into projects in Uzbekistan. So at the top, I was having stakes in more than 30 companies in Uzbekistan. So this was mostly small to medium-sized companies, whereas the largest of them in 2009, we bought a small stake in Universal Bank. So this is a regional bank with only one branch, was very small with assets about $2 million, and capital was that time about $300,000. And I became the chairman of supervisory board. So still I'm already more than 10 years remaining the chairman of the board. But now we have assets of about $150 million and capital of slightly less than $20 million. So a part of the bank, as Hikmat, a very good friend of mine, told, that times the ruling concept was diversify and diversify, because not all the risks they were controllable. And at the top, probably we had stakes in more than 35 companies, but since the reforms, since the competition in different areas start to grow, we all, and me, we understand that we have to concentrate. We have to concentrate, and a few years ago, I started to dispose of some of the minor stakes. So if you ask what was the rules, yes, what stakes I will keep and what stakes I will sell. So the simple rule was that either, I mean, in other assets than the bank, either we stay at top 5 in the country, or just we sell the stake. So for the time being, a part of the bank, we have controlling stake in the 5th largest microfinance company in the country. So I was one of the investors in the PayMe, and I'm still like investing into startups. We are owning the controlling stake in the insurance company Universal Sugurta. We are invested still in agriculture, and we are investing in real estate. So, but as I already mentioned, the ruling concept now is to get rid of the small stakes and concentrate on the stakes which have a huge potential for growth. If we come to the second part of my story, what do I feel, how what I think about the recent developments, and where I see the potential for growth. Well, first, let me start with the banking sector, and I will try to stay with the financial sector in my this speech. So the problems which I still see in our country. Let me continue with the figures. So the total assets of the bank, of all banks in Uzbekistan, is about $35 billion. Whereas we all know that the GDP of the country is slightly more than $55 billion. So this makes probably 70% of the banking assets in comparison to GDP. The credit portfolio of all the banks is about $27 billion, which makes a half of the GDP. So we see the very, very big potential for growth of the banking sector. The limitations, whereas the limitations are the accessibility of the entrepreneurs to the banking funds. The constraints are that the most of the constraints which small companies have is a pledge. So the banks require most of the pledge. Then the duration of finance is very short. So the banks try to finance projects with a duration of from 1 to 3 years, whereas the companies, they need a longer time financing. The third part is the cost of financing is very, very expensive. So for example, if the small company wants to get a credit in the bank, they have to pay probably around 12% in dollars.
Wow.
Where like if we, I mean, we all know that in the world the cost of finance is going to zero, yes, or close to zero. These numbers in Uzbekistan are very high. But still, like people are interested in this finance, but this the cost of funding puts a huge limitation on their growth possibilities. So the second, we see a lot of like potential. I mean, in the telecoms area, in electricity. So these are all sectors which are governed by the government monopolies, and only recently we started to see that the private companies are entering the energy sector of Uzbekistan. Though, for example, the Masdar, if I'm not wrong, won the first international tender, and they offered the price, I think, 2.8 cents per kilowatt of energy. So, and whereas the consumers, I mean, we as a legal entities, we pay something about 4.5 cents, which is still very cheap, actually, which is still cheap in comparison to other countries. And the telecoms and internet area, they also provide a huge growth in the country, because the coverage of internet in Uzbekistan is still very poor. So probably we have covered most of the big cities like Tashkent, Bukhara, Samarkand, but rural areas are still very much undercovered. Whereas the density of the population in Uzbekistan is very high. So this can be very much interested to telecom companies. And the things which we face in the banking area, Mr. Hikmat already told that he as an entrepreneur was thinking about where to take a hard currency. This kind of stuff, this is already eliminated, and we're working in a more or less a free currency or free plannable, yes, economy, where you can plan the currency rate and where you can plan your income and expenses and etc., etc. So this is very short about myself, about my views, and later on I will be ready to answer any other questions.
Thank you very much indeed. This is all looking forward to the future, and when we finish our initial presentations, I'm going to ask each of you to look into the future and tell us what you see. Our next speaker is Zuhursho Rahmatulloev, who is a co-founder of the Alif Bank in Tajikistan and CEO of Alif Malia in Uzbekistan. Prior to this, he co-founded a number of startups in real estate and tourism. And by the way, in his autobiography sketch, he said he founded and failed. Now that's very important because that's where how one learns often. But he has also founded a public organization called Peshraf, which supports young leaders through various stipend programs. He holds an MA in International Political Economy from the University of Warwick, a BA in Business Administration from South Bank University, also in Britain. He also holds a degree from the International Center for Education in Islamic Financing, Kuala Lumpur. By the way, I just note, I think he is the only one of the group whose businesses extend to other countries in Central Asia. And I definitely want you all to comment on that later on. All right, we're ready to hear from Mr. Rahmatulloev.
Pleasure, Dr. Starr. Thank you very much, distinguished panelists, speakers. It's my pleasure to be here, to be amongst you. It's a great opportunity for me to of course, to maybe to speak up to some extent, to tell my story and the story of our company here in Uzbekistan. If you don't mind, I would like to start with a short introduction of Alif as a company, and then we can move on to, let's say, our personal experiences of how we perceive what's happening in Uzbekistan and maybe Central Asia in general. Please, Matt, if you can put on the presentation kindly. Thank you very much. All right, perfect. Okay, we established Alif in 2014 as a microcredit organization in Tajikistan, Dushanbe. So at the time, we felt that the banking sector needs quite a bit of attention from many different perspectives. So inefficiency, maybe to some extent incompetence, mismanagement, all of these things basically prompted us to take this sector seriously at the time. And as a small group of, let's say, fresh graduates of different international universities around the globe, we converged and came back, let's say, to Dushanbe and established Alif as a microcredit organization. Over the last 7 years, we've built a bank already in Tajikistan and established a fintech organization in Uzbekistan. So we are operating in Uzbekistan over the last 2 years now, basically during the time when Uzbekistan has seen great developments. And in Tajikistan, thankfully, we are doing very well in terms of growth and in terms of serving the market, and our market share is growing, and our understanding of the sphere is improving, on a continuous basis. All right. So as of today, Alif, Alif is a fintech organization across Central Asia with the presence in Tajikistan, Uzbekistan. We have three main areas that generate income for us, or revenue generators, which is buy now, pay later solution, BNPL, we call it BNPL, payments, e-payments, e-wallets, P2P transactions, as well as remittances. And thankfully, we've been profitable since establishment. All right. And we have established a good partnership with Visa. It's one of a kind in Central Asia. Our lawyers know better why. And our top professionals, around 20 people plus, we had zero churn since founding, which is very important in terms of team spirit, in terms of, as some of the speakers have mentioned, focus, concentration, and basically working hard towards your goals. Please change the slide kindly. Yep. the structure, the corporate structure that we have, basically we have a holdco established in the UK that has all our assets in Tajikistan and Uzbekistan. It is a bank, Alif Bank in the Republic of Tajikistan, and 2 entities in Uzbekistan. Please, next. Okay. Key indicators of the past 7 years. Our core products are credits, or BNPL as I call them, and payment solutions. It has to be clear that as a company, we are developing our software in-house. So it's important for us to stay technological and ahead of our competition through flexibility, through technological advancement, and we, you know, it's an area that we invest heavily in fintech generally. Asset size grew by 200 times since establishment. We have over 650 people working for us and with us at the moment, with average age of 25-year-olds. So we have a fairly young workforce. Okay, we've served and serving around 600,000 people across 2 countries, in Tajikistan and Uzbekistan. Please, next slide. And if you don't mind, I would like to move swiftly to our work in Uzbekistan. The main indicators over the past 2 years, we've launched 2 years ago, we launched our BNPL product in Uzbekistan. So basically, we've established a network of merchants that sell their produce on deferred payment basis, okay, through Alif Molia. And a technological partner that we have is our entity, Alif Tech. So Alif Tech enables Alif Molia to process all the transactions as a sale and purchase, based on sale and purchase agreement. So far, since establishment 2 years now, we grew our assets 240 times. We've hired over 80 people in Uzbekistan, most of them 30+ programmers and developers. And we've served, or people who approach to us to buy something, over 135,000 people across Uzbekistan. Next slide, please. Okay. As of today, we're focusing on improving e-shopping experience that allows people to buy something online and pay later. Please, next slide. And given the nature of our business, we have to make sure that our scoring system is very, it's advanced basically. And that's why we have to invest heavily in terms of time and energy in order to build a strong scoring system based on machine learning, on artificial intelligence, understanding our data very well. And this is in the process. And plus we may want to offer these services or provide our scoring system to the market. Please, next slide. And as I said, it's all about the people, right? We have 0 churn rate of top management. Very few people want to leave us because of many different incentives and ways to incentivize and motivate our people across 2 countries. And please, next slide. We have one of the best talent in Tajikistan and Uzbekistan, and this is about us. Thank you very much. And I'd like to share some more things about how we see things developing in the private sector in Uzbekistan. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much. Our final presenter is Zafar Khashimov, is a real innovator. He's CEO and founder of the biggest retail chain in Uzbekistan, which is called Korzinka.uz. And they were founded in 1997 with 1 store. They now have a chain of 60 stores, and in 2005 became the first online grocery store in Uzbekistan as well. He's also owner of Red Tag Uzbekistan, a global fast fashion garment franchise comprised of 12 separate retail stores, fashion garment manufacturing company based in Dubai. He's also the Uzbekistan franchisee and brand owner of Flow, the largest footwear retailer in Turkey, as well as the owner of Baltan Trading Asia Company. He is the sole distributor of many well-known world brands, Nestle, Mafka, Bunge, Colgate, Palmolive, Imperial Tea, etc. He has a Master's of Management from Sussex University and a Master's in Mathematics from Tashkent University. You're on, Zafar.
Thank you, Dr. Starr, and thank you, distinguished panel members, and I greet everyone who is joined our meeting today. Well, talking about the current situation in the market in Uzbekistan, there are actually a few things which has to be mentioned. I'm sorry I joined a little later. Maybe previous speakers have already stated that. If we talk about like last 5 years, has been tremendous changes. Uzbekistan is opening up the currency. We had a very strict currency regulations, which was lifted. We had a very progressive tax reform. We had some, I would say, very sensible openings in the foreign trade. And generally, I feel upbeat about market. Unfortunately, we are passing this COVID crisis, and it is global. But nevertheless, I think that even handling of this crisis, I really think that happened like 10 years ago, maybe we would be in a very, very different situation. So what I can say, like, first of all, there is a very big change on, I would say, the official perception of a private business, and perception of private business by, let's say, government official and government bureaucrats. Like really, even today we had several meetings with government officials and discussing matters regarding the business environment, and so we see government being very open and very perceptive, and also building cooperation, and I would say, which is very good discussions with the business community, engaging them in discussing the ways to forward the reforms, and I would say this is a very important thing. And also, I would also outline with today market that a lot of players coming, especially like in the retail sector, we feel a huge competition is coming. Like we have Carrefour already in Uzbekistan. We have some interest of Belarus retailers who are coming and opening stores in Uzbekistan. And this is also very much expresses how free market, how much free market is better than regulated market. For the last 25 years, there wasn't any foreign players in retail market, while now, especially in retail sector is absolutely private, 100% private. And that is actually, I think, is a very good illustration how private market can attract both investments and participants and invite competition. And within that competition, of course, it is challenging, but we're doing very well. We are expanding, and last few years we opened over 20 stores, last 2 years only, and we're opening 22 stores only this year. Right after Eid, I'm going to Andijan and Fergana, where during 2 days we are opening 3 more stores. So making actually, when we put that deal for you, we said it was 60 stores. Now it is 61. With this 3, we will be 64 by the end of this week. So we're growing fast. And we got support from EBRD. EBRD is now shareholder in our operation, and beginning of last year they entered the shareholders of our supermarket chain with minority shares. So backed by their investment, it is actually giving us a lot of confidence despite the coming competition. But as I said, it is actually good. I think that retail sector is the one sector which is growing fastest now in the market, and the retail sector is probably one of a few sectors where government doesn't have any holdings. So and this is, I think, very, very good illustration of how to attract investment. Investment comes where there is no regulation and no government participation left, and that sectors are attracting investment very much. So yeah, as I said about market, I feel upbeat. I feel very positive. I just can only guess. If no COVID, generally when you're doing reforms, good news is very good, yeah. And if good news keep coming, and reforms are accelerating. Of course, COVID has imposed some challenges on economic situation because of lockdowns. We've seen, I would say, little bit drawback on consumption. We've seen, of course, the growth didn't take place last year, and but it is actually interesting. But it's picking up very well this year. And among other things which affects our business, I would say last 2 years the inflation is kind of becoming quite tamed. We used to have like 14-15% inflation. Projection for this year is not above than 11%, which is of course good. And we see that let's say our currency is showing very stable, I would say, and also the consumption is actually picking up back from it actually slipped down last year due to COVID. And during COVID, also one thing about private sector and retail, despite the lockdown, despite the all challenges on a border trade and all challenges of logistics, and Uzbekistan is double landlocked country, we didn't have any kind of food or consumer products crisis. It was all flowing smoothly, and the prices were also very stable, and that was done. Despite all this extraordinary situation, it actually gives me proud for our team and for the whole industry that we could come over without our people feeling any kind of food crisis, which didn't take place. And it was all on private sector, and the private sector actually proved its, I would say, sustainability even in that challenging situation. Well, that's like mainly it, but I will be open for any questions if needed. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Let me ask a very quick question of all our speakers, and that's this: are you open to foreign investment, and are you seeking it? This is a very quick answer from each of you in turn. Can you start?
Yeah, I can start. Yeah, we are open, and as I said, we have already attracted foreign investment, and we are enjoying it. Actually, we are still first year. We are kind of honeymoon with the EBRD, but EBRD is giving so much support, so much, I would say, expertise. We have formed really a very professional supervisory board, and introducing or establishing corporate governance standards, social and environmental action plan, and we are enjoying so much expertise and so much technical assistance from our partners. So even if not for money, I would go with them partners just to receive all this assistance and expertise, vast expertise and networking, which EBRD is offering us right now. Thank you.
Anvar, Irchaev, how do you feel on this subject?
Okay, Starr. We, of course, were open for new investors. So in general, in the last 2 years, we already saw 2 new foreign players entered the financial and the banking market. So the first one was TBC Bank. This is the huge Georgian banking financial holding. So, and the second one is a 100% subsidiary of the largest Kazakh bank, Halyk Bank, is a Tenge Bank in Tashkent. So we already in 2018, in the phase of increasing capital of our bank, we invited 2 foreign players, but they were like more portfolio investors. One from Kazakhstan, another is a Sturgeon Capital from London. But in a very close future, we are going to look for a strategic investor, because as Mr. Zafar said, we don't see any other way as to attract professional investors who will help us with our development, with risk management technologies, with methodologies for like operational and IT technologies, with new methods of launching a product, with IT security, and there are many topics which cannot be covered by ourselves, and where we need the support of global players who can bring us not only capital but also technologies.
Interesting. Hikmat, Abdurahmanov, what are your thoughts on this?
Yes, Dr. Starr, I would second my colleagues saying that we would also be interested, and we have been being approached specifically in our trade business where we sell construction equipment. We've been approached by Russian companies. We are being approached by other companies. So basically, it's not only the money that we would definitely appreciate, it's the knowledge, skills, and capacity building that we would be looking for. What we can provide in exchange is obviously untapped in many regards market, double digits growth opportunities. So yes, responding to your question, yes, we would consider, plus not looking only for the money, but mostly technologies, know-how, and the knowledge that this foreign investor would bring. Thank you.
Dora Atadjanova, what are your thoughts on foreign investors?
Right. The answer is yes, but if we talk about the queue, in the first place, we're interested in investment in a form of the grants, since we happen to be a female CEO company with the agro-tech, like IT. So we are very attractive for the grants. So yeah, this is the first thing we're interested in, and then for the investment as a venture companies. But the answer is totally yes.
Thank you. And Mr. Rahmatulloev, your thoughts?
Yeah, certainly yes, we are open to new investment. There are 2 things that we normally consider, as everyone else here. It's basically terms of partnership as well as valuation. These are 2 things which are very important to us. As of today, we are basically drafting a shareholder agreement with 2 major investors that are entering Alif, and it's happening. It should be complete by the end of maybe June-ish. But it's about getting the basics right and making sure that the partnership is basically working for you, for the company, and you stay agile, competitive, fast, flexible, and of course valuation is of concern, always will be, I guess. And then short answer, yes, we are very open.
Now, if I were a potential investor in your young firms, one of the questions I would ask, well, yes, Uzbekistan is a significant economic space, but it's part of a region, and I'd do better if I could somehow invest on a more regional basis. Do you all see yourselves as having any regional future, or are you going to reach directly out into the big world beyond?
It's better if you names, if you.
I mean, you're the one you are already an international investor, so you should speak to this. Do you expect to go, Alif, to go into other countries in the region?
Absolutely, absolutely, Dr. So we basically making a soft launch in Russia. Yeah, serving and dealing with migrant workers from
migrant workers. Yes, you found a really new one. But what about Turkmenistan, Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan? Any prospects?
Yes, yes, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyz Republic. Yes, very interesting markets. We're very open to this. I think we have an experience, more or less, or the experience to enter new countries, new markets. And I think Uzbekistan has been a very good and successful venture of ours. And we are happy with this move. And this is another testimony and basically it shows that Uzbekistan is ready and open to new players, new entrepreneurial approach, new people coming in and doing something interesting. So, and I think our company and the growth rate and everything what we're doing have been able to achieve so far shows and indicates that Uzbekistan is actually, living up to its promises, the promises of the government, of the president, and the promises of the better environment for business and entrepreneurship. But yes.
Dora Atadjanova, can I ask you? You're in a field, agriculture export. Every country, all your neighbors in that field as well, and maybe they don't need you. Maybe they have their own Dora Atadjanovas, or don't they?
Come again. What's the question again?
Do you see any prospect for expanding into other countries in Central Asia?
Absolutely. I mean, as I mentioned, I'm planning to cover 5 countries, 5 STAN countries within 3 years. So yeah, that's the plan.
Impediments? What are the impediments for your doing this?
Oh, can you give me another word of impediments? Sorry for my vocabulary.
What prevents you from doing this? What are the things factors that cause difficulty in your expanding on a regional basis?
Oh, what's the difficult part?
Yes.
Well, I can say what's the actually easier part and then come from there. So we basically post-Soviet Union countries, and we all have the similar problem for like maybe 20 years. We don't really have the same development in agro-business. So it kind of, if you compare with the European countries or even India, it's like didn't develop for these certain years. So just building a system, a database, and then connecting, and then providing the technical, let's say these chains, cold chains, that already are good enough. So once we do it in Uzbekistan, we can copy paste it in Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan. But the difficult part, maybe political part in Turkmenistan, that would be hard.
But they're doing a lot of agricultural exports.
I'm sorry, I just...
They are doing a lot of export of agricultural products already.
They're doing their business very well, even like in general. So, but I guess there is still a room to help, like to improve it. But yeah, we will see what will be the difficulties. But for now, I can see like what is the similarities. But like once we have next year this call, I will tell you about the difficulties.
What do the rest of you think about this regional dimension? Does it have any prospects for the future or not? Hikmat, what are your thoughts?
I think definitely yes. The interesting fact is that Central Asian countries, as you know, are the least connected. And in terms of trade, in terms of cultural similarities, we have a huge way to go. One example of how we see ourselves expanding to Central Asian market is that we have aspirations that Team University becomes Central Asian University. And we would like to see representatives of all Central Asian countries to come to Tashkent and study. So this, by doing this, we hope to contribute into the intensifying the interconnectedness of the region. And there are many other examples, such as we have a business of supplying medical equipment to Uzbekistan. We are one of the leading medical equipment supplier company. And my partner in that regard was mentioning last week is that we will be getting exclusive dealerships not only for Uzbekistan, but also for the Central Asia. Meaning that being in Tashkent, let's say for Bausch and Lomb, for a huge pharmaceutical corporation, we are attractive to actually expand our market beyond Uzbekistan and represent them in the whole Central Asia. So these are the examples where we definitely can create synergy. The only challenge I would see is that we learn how to work not only within our own comfort zone, meaning the city or the country, but also establish, let's say, offices around the region, not necessarily always physical representation, but build some relations with regional countries, not being afraid of getting out of your own borders. And Zuhursho is actually a great example doing that, because he is operating in already several countries in Central Asia. So there are a lot of things to learn from people like him.
Well, now from a perspective of an international investor, they're looking at you all in Uzbekistan, and they are reading the international financial press, and they're hearing discussions of a potential post-COVID boom and maybe post-COVID inflation, which is already showing its head, and therefore post-COVID risk. And I'm wondering how you address this issue in the future. Anvar, can you get out a crystal ball and tell us your view of the future?
With pleasure, with pleasure. Well, I personally think that Mr. Zuhursho made a very right decision to choose Uzbekistan as his first international market, because he saw and we see huge demand for finance, for financial products in the country. And I'm happy to hear that he is successful, and he and his team are very keen about covering Uzbek market, and then from Uzbekistan go further to other markets. Mr. Zafar also did mention that probably the largest Kazakh retail chain, Magnum, yes, if I'm not wrong, is also entering Uzbekistan, and they plan to open few really big, if I'm not wrong, cash and carry shops, and this going to bring another wave of competition to the market. Well, talking about ourselves, well, the Uzbek market is still in a very high demand of capital. So for me, I don't see any perspective in the close future to go other markets, because we still are learning how to swim in our country. And for us now, the biggest question is not to go to other foreign markets, but rather probably in the light of entering of big foreign players, how to keep our market share and how to offer new interesting products to our clients.
Yeah. I understand, Anvar, but my question is the degree of risk you see in the future.
Yes, yes. This is the second part.
Do you see any dark clouds on the horizon or only blue skies?
Well, we saw, so the dark clouds is of course probably the currency risk for me as a financial player, because for the time being we saw that the ruble, for example, has fallen down by 16–70% last year. Even Turkish lira has fallen down by more than 20%, and Kazakh tenge, whereas our government is still like thinking about probably social aspect of the people, tries to keep the inflation, which is like they think that the inflation is linked to the currency rate, which is like obviously in my opinion is not correct. So these are two different things. So the currency rate is going to be a problem, especially for financial sector. Second problem is that the entrance of the big foreign players, which are going to make a huge competition to us. This is also going to be a problem, and we have to prepare ourselves. The third thing is, of course, the regulation, and my personal opinion, we want to see how the announced privatization will be going on. So the state assets, for me, the question will be they bought by the local players or by real foreign players, which bring technologies and capital and new assets and people. So these are things which are making me to think and to prepare how to plan our own business.
Well, we have some very interesting questions coming in, but several viewers have asked to make available the various slides that you all have shown, and we'll try to do that and do that soon. The question that is not a question, the point that has been raised by a viewer: Uzbekistan has announced large-scale privatization with many firms up for sale at this point. How do you feel about this further privatization process? Do any of you intend to participate in it, and do you encourage others, including foreigners, to do so?
Maybe I will comment on that question. I think, like, we've passed some stage of reforms, whereas I would say, like, there were like now all low-hanging fruits of reforms have been already picked up. And I think that this privatization process is actually a real testing for society to be ready for reforms, for a government to be ready for reforms. And this is, I think, like the reforms, privatization, which is now underway, will be a very big indicator and could be a really turning point on the current situation. So I'm very, very, very excited by the government is putting up these assets to be privatized. But yet, as Anvar said, we have to see how this will perform in reality. How the whole process will be built. Will it be really competitive, transparent, and will it actually gain kind of momentum, which will allow government to I would say, push for a further privatization, or will it be just disappointment and then this will somehow in Uzbekistan we have a huge participation of government in the economy, and that is a key point. So privatization is a very effective way of government to get out from things they shouldn't be involved in the first place. So if they will do it, I would think like forcefully and bold, I think that it will be a great signal for all participants inside country and outside on the commitment of the government towards the reforms. And I'm like excited, and I'm looking. I want to be optimistic. There is the interest. Like I myself will be taking part in privatizing of some assets, which would be of interest for our future growth and for our like which could be instrumental in our future growth and in our expansion. Thank you.
No question has bothered international financial institutions, international investors, and regional investors and domestic Uzbek investors than the question of corruption. And obviously, there have been great hopes that the privatization process, the rise of the private sector, will somehow curb a culture of corruption that flourished from Soviet times right down to recent years. Tell us your thoughts on this. What have your experiences been? Are you optimistic on this, or is this still a challenge, a daily challenge? Who'd like to take a crack at this? Very interesting. Silence.
I might volunteer, Dr. Starr, I can volunteer responding to such a tough question. Okay, so I partially am optimistic, partially not very. Where I'm optimistic is where private companies started to enter, let's say higher education. So if you look at the landscape of higher education back 10 years ago, you would hear it as a normal that in one or another family, father or uncle would look to find some connections in the universities and try to bribe some of the dean or vice rector or someone to get his son or nephew accepted by a university. So did it change? I think yes, significantly, with the participation of the private universities like us. State universities are no longer keeping that monopoly, and all of a sudden students have options to choose. And I think this is the best way, as Zafar Khashimov just earlier mentioned, where private companies enter, actually corruption gets reduced automatically. So there are certain examples where private sector was allowed to enter, and for that we just saw that mostly political will was needed. So there were no other, let's say, impediments for private sector to enter and start competing with SOEs, with state-owned companies, to actually eliminate or minimize corruption. Where I'm not so optimistic is where government is trying to keep their services state affiliated, be it, let's say, GUPs, how they call them in Russian, abbreviation, which is government unitary companies under the municipal bodies, under some ministries and the state enterprises, where they are solely providing some services. In these areas, still, I think, again, because of the absence of competition and transparency, we still can see signs of very gray schemes, and thankfully, we see the freedom of speech. Relatively easily you can criticize and actually have an access to certain information. And you can see that not always government officials or state companies heads are not always ready to comment and explain why here or there is still, let's say, gray areas. So these are the briefly examples of certain changes in some areas and status quo in some others. Thanks.
Thank you. Several of you have had really solid experience in auditing, in detailed auditing of firms, including Mr. Rahmatulloev, Zuhursho. My question is this: do you, on the basis of your professional experience in that field of auditing, are you optimistic or pessimistic about the prospects for reducing corruption?
Yes, yes, Dr. Starr, I'm very optimistic. You know, the important thing is that there is a willpower to do something about it, to change. Does it trickle down to the very bottom and everyone supports this idea and wants to be part of this transformation is a different question. But you know that the people who, you know, in whose hands, you know, power is concentrated, they really want to change something in a better way, maybe not at the expense of their own interests, maybe, I don't know for sure, but this is happening, it's taking place. For example, my experience in Uzbekistan for 2 and 3 years, given my position, my personal position as a human being, as an entrepreneur, I do not deal with anyone where there is a element of corruption, element of bribery or anything else, okay? It's just, this is very, a principle of mine that's very important, an ethical and moral position. And I haven't seen it personally. I have heard, I have, you know, tried to understand through other people here in Uzbekistan, but given the reforms and the changes taking place right now, I'm very optimistic. Okay, things can change overnight, of course, I don't know for sure, but I'm very optimistic because I'm running a transparent, very transparent business model or business in this country, and it's working out well. All right. And this is to be fair to the country and to the management of this country and to the business community as well. I hope I've answered your question. And
yes,
please,
thank you very much.
Yeah.
I wonder if any of the others of you would like to comment. Dora Atadjanova.
Yeah, I think it might be interesting, the answer to this question from the people in their 20s, what they think. Well, I would say it's about industry. So some industry, they just happen to be corrupted, and as an investor, I would just not go to this. Some industry are really hard to be corrupted because it takes a really good knowledge to make it happen. For example, my business, a platform to connect agro sector, like exporters and farmers. This project was started 4 times with the government organizations, and they all stopped once the budget ended. So it's like, it's like you can have a support financial, you can have a government support, but if you don't have the idea how to make it, if you not implement it, and you do it usually when it's your own money and when it's your own project, it's not the government, then yeah, it's happening. So the industry where the IT is really hard to like go into it because not everybody can just do it unless you can do it. So yeah, it's about industry. It is a good place to do the business. Uzbekistan is a really good place to do the business as long as you choose the right industry. My answer.
Would any others of you wish to comment on this question?
Yeah, I want to really say that the situation with corruption is changing to good and changing fast. I will tell that we are having still cases of corruption, and this is obvious, but we see that civil society basics are being built, and among which I would say this freedom of speech. You know, really, social media, bloggers, journalists are now, you know, really very vocal, and you see so many cases in which actually raised by civil society in social media, etc., which cannot be ignored or cannot be, you know, silenced. And this, so it's actually gaining momentum, and the government has to react, has to I would say look at these cases, and which is actually, I think, very good. And another thing which I would say will reduce the maybe corruption, and this is my big hope, is that digitalizing a lot of government services, because, like, you know, before, like you wanted to get, I don't know, even marriage certificate, you go there, you stay in a queue, you know, like and they find you some reason not to give it today, come tomorrow, and like, you know, with a small bribe you can get it today, and things like that. You know, that petty corruption is going in this. Body cameras with the traffic police. and cameras this. So I think like technology is also playing a good role in, I would say, how to call it, reducing corruption. Still, what I think is a very, very long way to go. But if you will tell, like, again, like, you know, we are just talking now here problems. But if you look at it, let's say in a prospect of last 5, 6, 10 years, I think very, very and very impressive progress is made.
Very interesting indeed. Ladies and gentlemen, we're running out of time. I want to note that this is the second of a series that we've produced on the new business class, the new businessmen and businesswomen across Central Asia and the Caucasus. We began with Afghanistan, and this remarkable presentation this morning is the second. I hope we'll continue through other countries of the region. But I want to thank Dora Atadjanova, Zuhursho, Rahmatulloev, Zafar Khashimov, Hikmat, Abdurahmanov, and Anvar Irchaev for participating. And I want to say a word personally about them, especially for foreign viewers, viewers outside of Uzbekistan. I'm fortunate to have known all of these people for quite a few years now. And I've watched their businesses grow, and I've watched them evolve and develop. And I would be, as a person who spent a whole career in higher education, and therefore have been in constant contact with rising younger men and women, I would be hard put anywhere in the world to find a more impressive, more intelligent, and more principled group of people than you have heard, than those from whom you have heard this morning. I certainly commend them to you. They would be ideal partners, it would seem to me, for any international enterprise or investment. So thank you very much, and we'll be back in touch with you shortly with the next in this series.